By Alex Moss, who's CEO of FireCask. It's going to be all to do with content, data visualization, and obviously how to get more visitors to your site, improve the performance, improve your returns, obviously. So, Alex, it's all yours.
So, first of all, who am I and what do I do? I own two companies. The first is FireCask. We do SEO for small to large businesses, anything from accountants to very large bingo sites. And also I own a WordPress framework called PDIG. It kind of is a layer between WordPress and a designer, and I'd use it to make really cool websites which are very mobile friendly, very fast performing, and very good on-site SEO. I've worked with a load of businesses. We've redeveloped The Poke, which is the UK's most popular comedy site. Think of it as a British BuzzFeed. We've worked with Harry Casino, Amy Winehouse Foundations, all of these great people. And I have written in quite a few cool places as well, like Smashing Magazine, where I interviewed for the first time in 4 years both of the co-founders of WordPress. One of them lives in Austin, Texas, and the other one lives 40 minutes down the road from me in Stockport, and I had no idea for 5 years. So, firstly, it's quite obvious, but you need to secure your brand. People kind of just get their domain name, maybe just get a .com, and that's it. There's one website which is great, and all you do is you put in the name that you have of your domain or the domain that you want, and it tells you all the different types of social sites and social networks that have the username and tell you whether it's free. This is great when you're forming a new company or a new website, or you're checking through existing ones. The amount of times that I've seen, very large sites just totally forget about, Vimeo. They may not want it, but a competitor has stolen a Vimeo profile off them by the fact that they just didn't own it. So it's very important that you own all of those things. That's a screenshot from Noam, which is a great tool, and it takes about 30 seconds to do. So I very much suggest that you do that. It's not about increasing visitors, it's just about avoiding the decrease or avoiding competition taking those visits and those potential clients. When you've got your website, there's a lot of technical SEO that's involved. I consider myself an architect, and I look at a website like a building. You can have a new build that's been built in like 3 weeks, and it's terrible. In 40 years' time, the walls will be falling down, there'll be safety issues. It's exactly the same with the website. You need to make sure it's built properly. And there's a number of ways that it's been built properly. One thing that we try to do as much as possible is decrease page speed. And by doing that, the page loads faster, and that's great for the user because they're not going to see, the revolving circle line. The page is never going to finish loading, and it also makes it better in terms of ranking. If you have a really slow site and you have a page that's loading for 40 seconds because of some random JavaScript that's just running, then it will actually take your rankings down of one of the hundreds of factors that Google gives to you. You can do that. You can improve stuff by doing caching and compression. There's WordPress plugins out there like W3 Total Cache and WP Super Cache that just make sure that they save the right file. So if you go to 10 pages, it only loads things once, and in the second page it's kind of loaded locally from your computer, and therefore it's much faster loading time. The next thing, which really grinds my gears when I don't see it, is mobile friendliness. The amount of sites that I've been on where you have to kind of do that just to read a bit of text, it really, really annoys people. And again, Google really does like mobile sites, which you can split into a responsive design. If you have a bit of a lower budget, that's whereby it just says if the screen size is less than X, then it will kind of change the way it looks. You can actually take content away or provide content specifically for mobile users. And as well as that, it just makes it look good. And if you don't want to do that and you have a larger budget, you can have a completely separate mobile site. The one bad thing about that is that you need to be on top of indexation. If you have two versions of a page, Google doesn't like it, considers it duplicate content. If you have a mobile site, a separate mobile site, you need to make sure that all the canonicalization is correct, and you can do that via XML sitemaps or canonical tags within the code itself. I've done a very comprehensive post, well, comprehensive-ish, on WooRank about doing a mobile SEO audit. But if you want a really, really detailed version of it, I wrote the chapter on technical mobile SEO for e-consultancy. So if you're a member, you can download that guide as part of, I think it's about 400 or 500 page guide of all kinds of SEO help, which is, I think Bastian also, who spoke before me, wrote a chapter as well. Also with indexation, robots.txt, you'd be surprised how many people don't use it well. They'll just put allow everything, and you don't want it to allow everything. A classic mistake is WordPress's searchability, where it just has search.php, s equals, and whatever the search is. You have to disable that in robots.txt, otherwise it can be abused. I've seen test sites of people who purposely go onto competitor sites and search for things like Viagra, and then it indexes that search result, and then they do it loads and loads and loads. And if you want to do it really sophisticated, you can actually build some kind of bot that just keeps on searching the site, and it'll just index hundreds of thousands of pages with completely irrelevant results. Don't do that, by the way. I'm just saying that it can be done. The other thing to think about is information architecture. So that's kind of like internal linking. If you were to go to the home page, you need to set it out in a way not just for user experience, but also the URL structure. You need to make sure that the information architecture is there, and you've got a good sitemap, and it leads people where people need to go to convert, but more so lead people back to where they need to be if they change their mind. It's surprising how many people go to a specific landing page and then just can't go anywhere else unless they go to the navigation, which is, obvious, people do it, but still, visitors, you need to treat them like children, because most of the audience are, and they're not as technically minded as we are naturally. I was having a conversation a bit ago about how stupid some people can be, especially when it comes to user testing. They just can't find very obvious stuff such as entering an email, and it's a shame, but you need to cater for those people. The other thing is the external links that point to the site. If you have a new site, it's not so much of an issue, but if you have a legacy site, a massive enterprise site, then you'll have tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, if not millions of links pointing to your site, and a lot of them can be terrible. They can be made from black hat techniques that have happened years ago, and you might have got spanked with some penalty by Penguin or Panda, and you need to get rid of those links. If you don't get rid of them, then you're going to stay penalised, and you're not going to rank at all for the things that you want to rank for, and you need to clean that up. There's a few tools that will help you look at your profile. Majestic is a great tool that I'm sure, I don't know if any of you know about it, but that's kind of a link crawler, and it shows you very, very detailed analytics on who's linking to your site. But more importantly, you can use it for competitor analysis. So if you found that there was a competitor who was actually ranking really well, look at their link profile. Why are they ranking? Can I copy what they're doing? Not exactly, but can I just take the good links, and then I'll try and get a link from those places as well, and then I'll just not get the rubbish links that they may have as well. Another tool is Open Site Explorer. It's not as good, I don't think, but it's still rich with data. And Link Risk, which is a tool that kind of analyzes all your links and gives you a score of how risky your domain may be interpreted by Google. Those guys are based in Manchester, and they're really cool, really helpful, and they'll show you a demo if you go on there. Rich snippets and structured data is very important. I don't know if you've come across these search results, I'm sure you all have, with star ratings. Believe it or not, they do increase CTR. It increases visits. It's really, really easy to do, so long as you have that data. So I've got one of some Nike Air shoes. It shows you that 7 people have reviewed it and they've given it nearly 5 stars, and that creates trust. And if you can get hundreds of reviews for hundreds of games or sites that you may be dealing with, then people will think, well, if those 100 people have given it a good rating, then it must be good, so I'm going to go in there. If you have a price for anything, if you're selling products, for example, you can just put the price there as well. One other one that probably no one deals with at all is recipes. It's the only one that shows you a thumbnail now. They've got rid of the author profiles in the last few months, and they've also got rid of video thumbnails from sites other than very, very large sites such as YouTube. So that's kind of the only one that you can use, and I did test that, and that's one that I found a couple of weeks ago. You can use Google's structured data testing tool, where you enter the URL and it just shows you how it would interpret that specific URL. And I think you can actually put in your own HTML as well before it's live, just to test that all the code's correct. If your web developer doesn't know how to do it, then you very much have to force them to make sure that they know how to do it. Another part of structured data is social structured data. So if you share a link on Facebook or Twitter, it'll usually take the title, the meta description, and it'll just choose a random image from somewhere in that page. You can set all of that, and it's actually quite easy to do. And if you can set all of that, you can create clickbait. Upworthy are a great example. You know, a grandfather and granddaughter went to the woods and they had a bonding session, and, you know, this video will be heartbreaking. I don't know why, but you are enticed to click through, and that definitely increases visits. And if you're running a gaming site, you can cater for the audience within Facebook, and you can do it specifically in Facebook and Twitter and Google+. So if you have a different demographic in Facebook than your Twitter followers, then you can cater for those people. We did this is just an example of when we kind of rehired our head of search. He left us because he had a very, very good promises in that company, and then he quickly found out that it wasn't true, so we brought him back, and we didn't tell anyone about it, and we didn't want to tell people until they were reading the post. So that definitely got us some clickbait by, you know, selecting a question mark and using a different title within social sites. The one problem that you do have if you don't do it is you get out of context links. These are two great examples, one from Sky News and one from The Telegraph. The Sky News one is really weird because this was a few months ago. Someone was held over Claudia Lawrence's disappearance. I don't know if you know the story. Some woman in the UK just disappeared. Here it kind of looks like the Oscar Pistorius is your suspect. And I think he's got bigger problems than that. And again, you know, below, Ed Miliband went to some place in Coventry and talked about education, and yet those two guys, who I think were in the news for being on death row, one of them took 12 minutes to die instead of 30 seconds. You know, it took pictures from related articles in those sites, and then it used them there. Now, if you're a marketer who to do a bit of unethical practices, this is great, because someone's going to go, oh my God, what's Pistorius done now? You know, isn't he in court at the moment? And what is he doing in the UK? You know, kidnapping more women. But somehow they didn't care. The head of development at Sky News said not really a priority, don't really care, which is a shame. But you can really, really optimize stuff like that. So once you've done the techie stuff, think more about content. So there's a few things you can do. You need to know your audience. If you've got a bingo site, generally your demographic's going to be more of the female persuasion, and then if you've got sports betting, it's generally more of the male persuasion. So you need to cater that content specifically, even when it comes to the attitude and grammar of the content itself. Doing long-form content such as how-to guides, walkthroughs, you know, how to be a better poker player, for example, is all better stuff that people will read. And if they're really giving you actionable tips to the reader, then they're most probably going to convert into a game. And especially if you insert CTAs within that, you know, now that you've read this guide, you know, come and play. It sounds obvious, but most people just ignore this and just create a page. There's 700 words. I don't really care about things like typography, again, which is really important. here's a block of text and hope that it ranks. But if you're ranking, that's brilliant. But if you go on the website and it's rubbish and it doesn't serve what the user wants, then you might as well not rank at all, and you've wasted your budget ranking. Things like headings, again, it's so simple, but I skim read everything. And if I'm interested in the headings, then I'm going to go back to the beginning, I'm going to read the whole thing. So make sure that you've got, if you want to provide certain content from the large block of content, put it in a box, you know, that's just grayed out a bit, you know, provide more CTAs and provide more headings. And going beyond flat content, again, don't just shove in words. Get rich media, get better images, get more relevant images. If you're talking about poker, insert some images of people playing poker, insert cards, you know, anything that relates to the content itself. Targeting your audience is interesting. I actually found, when I was doing my research for this specifically, I found two documents, one by Microsoft and one by the Gambling Commission. They're a couple of years old, but the stats are still very relevant, and it tells you all the different niches within gaming as vertical, and the audience that is in each of them, not just who they are, but their habits, what time of day they generally play. And it segments even into ages and how much those age ranges spend on a monthly basis. This is brilliant, because if you know that your key audience is a woman between the age of 30 and 45 and they generally spend about £30 a week or something, then you know that you can target very specific content towards those people, and give them what they want. When you're thinking creatively, again, I've mentioned walkthroughs. Infographics are very handy if you've got the statistics to back it up. You can make stuff up if you really want to, but generally it's very good to put all the sources at the bottom. There's a lot of infographics agencies out there. There's one in Manchester as well called NeoMam that I don't know if any of you heard about. They even go as far as to say they'll do all the research, all the data analysis, they'll do all the design, so you can just give them money, sit back, and then a couple of weeks later you'll get a full infographic full of everything. And even when you get that, people love it and they will reshare it. So even saying, if you want to link to this, here's a bit of code, and then you can put this infographic on your site, and then it will create a link back to you, which again is most probably going to be relevant when people are taking a visual such as that. Using APIs as well. I don't know how many of you use APIs, but we built something for a betting site that brought in live betting odds. And that was really, really useful for those people, because they didn't want to update it. They wanted to make sure it was the most up-to-date and relevant thing without it looking like it was a blatant iframe from another website. They wanted it all to look part of their own branding, which really worked for them. UGC is interesting as well, because essentially it's free data, and they give it to you, and you can use it however you want. So things would be reviews, which again can contribute towards the rich snippets that I talked about earlier. Even testimonials about your site or the platforms that you provide. All of those things can really create good, rich and relevant content, which can help towards ranking. And again, it creates trust. If everyone's giving you a great positive review, then they'll read them. I always read reviews before I go in and invest in something or purchase a product or a service. After you've done all of that, you need to convert the content that you've made. So you've done the technical stuff, you've done the content, you've got everything perfected on your site. Now to make sure that more people actually end up buying something from you or playing with you. So branding is really simple and unconscious. Put your brand everywhere. If you've got a logo, use it in as many places. I mean, I've used it on my site just for list items. I need to improve the padding a little bit, but the point's there. Even doing those little things, or if you've got a logo that can be used within other images. So I know that it's our first birthday trading as our company, and when we do it, we're going to have the number one and the flame at the top, so it looks like a candle. Those creative ways of actually using your logo for something other than just here's my logo is great. Another thing to think about is design. The amount of, especially gambling sites that I've been onto that just have every colour under the sun, and it just confuses people. If you want people to go to a specific area, blend everything in and then make that CTA shine out. So this is a great example from Colour Lovers, which is great. If you go on there and you enter even, the colours that you've got on your website, or you want a new colour scheme, these are great places. So you can see that the three at the left are very in line, and then the orange and the red stand out a lot more. My eyes are immediately drawn to that. So having that blue-grey kind of colour scheme and then making your CTA red or orange will really draw people's eyes towards that button, and therefore they will most likely convert, and they'll at least go through into the funnel that you want them to go down. Other things as well is grouping your logo with other logos that are already trusted. So if you're an affiliate site and you're offering, Lucky Bingo or something like that, you can put their logo on because you're legitimately an affiliate to theirs. So you can just use their logo to create trust with the user who will already know their brand as well, and you are allowed to piggyback. Calls to action, again, it's really simple. My eyes are already drawn to the word action simply because it's got a different coloured background and different foreground writing. Here we've got one of my client sites, and they've got a bingo provider, and even inserting something as simple as a lady playing bingo makes it more relevant. Again, I said before, using a poker content to provide cards, this is really relevant, and it does make people unconsciously think that they're in the right place. Even when they're not reading, they may just be more interested in looking at images. Even doing things like creating, the typography is used really well here, the bonus, knowing exactly how much the bonus is, and then using the CTA claiming that bonus, and using Lucky Rainbow and Butler's Bingo is creating that trust of co-branding. Layout and typography, as I mentioned before, when I'm skim reading, I want to know exactly what I want before I read everything that I want. So the top one is classic of, that's part of a long form content of a search operator's guide that the head of SEO did. That's a way of, you should read it. If you go to it, just search for search operator's guide. I'm sure we're on page 1 now, if we're not, haven't done my job very well. But that just shows you lots of ways that we can use panels, and oddly enough, we got a lot of feedback about how the page was laid out really well and really easy to understand, and the CTAs were there. I mean, we're not earning any money from this guide, but it was still really easy for people to use and our audience to use. The one below it's our mailing list. Simply putting something in a lighter shade of grey really does make people look at that area. And this is part of the homepage. One of the few services that we offer as an agency. I know if I can't really be bothered reading the whole homepage, I at least know that we do creative content production. I don't really care about all this small text below. That's all I need to know. Creating incentives is really important as well. Really obvious, but discount codes for doing certain actions and giving them even more of a discount for doing more actions. I'm seeing a lot of get 10% off this, or earn an extra bonus if you share this page on Twitter or Facebook, and you can actually do it so that you can view different content dependent on whether they've liked your page or a URL, which is very interesting. So you can lock people out and even get more exclusive content, and their incentive is to share something, which again will snowball effect into social habits. This I've seen on voucher codes. Expiration dates are great. We both know that as soon as the expiration passes, you'll create a new voucher, but that doesn't really matter. If the user's on my voucher codes or something, and they see that they've got only 10 days or 4 days to do what they need to do, it creates a bit of pressure towards that user. Again, it's really obvious, but people just forget this stuff. This I kind of came across a couple of weeks ago, Chef Steps. I've never really come across this site, but I know a lot of foodies use it. To know that there's 127,000, 128,000 other subscribers in this site means, well, if it's good enough to get that amount of numbers, then surely it must be good resource. So I also like the way that it says, hello, I am, and enter your name here, and my email is, instead of saying, enter your email and enter your name and you'll get something. Another person who I know, who we did a site, who we looked at a site with, he did, if you join our mailing list, we'll give you 5 free tips. And that's great as well, because they'll get something in return for getting something, for giving you their email. And that's great, because you've got your data capture and they've got something for free. And then all you need to do is keep on emailing them. And eventually those people will convert if you offer them the right things. Another thing to do is using pop-ups. This is an overlay, which means that as soon as you click something, if you want them to go somewhere without them leaving your website, it kind of just opens up a little pop-up, and then as soon as you click close, they're kind of back on the page that they once were. Another pop-up that I've seen that really frustrates me, but it does work, is if you scroll down a bit of the page, then the pop-up comes up, so people aren't really expecting it at first. Or if you're navigating away from the page and it gives you that dialogue saying, are you sure you want to leave? If you do, you may die. If you don't, I'll give you an extra bonus. These things really, really work, even though they annoy people. Analysing your own data is really, really interesting as well. Doing things like A/B tests, really simple, but even if you've had your own site and you've been looking at it for months and months and months, especially if you're designing your own site, you get a bit naive to the way in which it should look. Getting a stranger to look at something is very interesting, but also doing A/B tests will provide you data that, regardless of your opinion, if you like page A but page B converts higher, then get rid of page A. That's the one that isn't converting as well. So we did a bit of work for one client, I don't know who it is, but we made a new site for them based on A/B tests that they were providing before. And as you can see, as soon as we made those changes, bounce rate went down and visits went up, partly because when we made the new site, all the technical SEO was above board, rather than this old site that was there for 10 years and outdated. And of course, when we did that, we also did all the conversion rate optimization to make sure that people stayed in the site. Using goals in Google Analytics, even goals such as, entering an email. You might get that MailChimp or whatever email system that you're using, but using it in Analytics means you can drill down where those people have come from and where they've been within the site before they actually sign up to the mailing list. Using internal site search, as I said before, although people abuse it, you can actually track it in your admin settings. You just tell them the parameter, and it's a great way to see what people are searching for if you've got a search bar, and a lot of visitors actually do perform searches. Competitor analysis, as I mentioned before, when you're using Majestic to look at competitors and see how their link profiles are doing. SEMrush is a great tool. It shows you things like what their top keywords are organically or through AdWords. It tells you their competitors as well. So if you've got your site and you think you've got competitor X, Y, and Z, you may find that by going into SEMrush, there's competitor A, B, and C. You weren't even aware of them, and then you can see what they're doing creatively and off-site, and how their link profiles are doing, and make sure that you're doing the same thing or improving on what they're doing. The last thing, social. Again, it really obvious, and using social structured data before, you can use social sites a different way. TweetDeck is amazing. If you search for a hashtag, or even if you search for a certain phrase, you can get a column that updates in real time and tells you exactly what that person said, and interacting with them through Twitter is really, really a quick win. It's cheap. And if you're a small site, you can even have it on your phone and just make sure that you just interact with people who don't know who you are, but more importantly, interact with everyone who does know who you are. If someone tweets to you and you just don't do anything, the likelihood of converting is very low. But if you help them, and help them in very good time as well, then it really creates trust, and they know that there's a human involved in the back end of the site. Facebook, you can use something called graph search. I don't know if any of you have used it, but you can use it in a creative way. So if you want to do some outreach, for example, you can search for, say, look for journalists who like 888, for example, and you will find people who aren't connected to you, and then just connect to them. Word of mouth is great, and connecting with those people and saying, hey, do you fancy doing some kind of feature on our site for something that you write for, is actually easier to do than you think. Some of the outreach that we've done, we're surprised at how easy it is to place a client on their site simply because of asking. Some people think that they're unapproachable, but they're not. Google Plus, I don't know if anyone even uses it. Only techies really use it, like me, and even I use it about once a month. But it is useful because the communities there, which are the same as Facebook groups essentially, they're very interactive. And if you go in there and you've got the audience that you may or may not have, you might find it's very useful to actually go in there and, as your brand or as yourself, contribute towards those communities. One very cool thing that you can do is do Hangouts on air. I don't know if any of you have seen one, but you can do a Hangout that's publicly available, and it's also accessible on YouTube. So I don't know if any of you have watched anything live on YouTube. I watched Felix Baumbacher, jump off the Red Bull capsule thing, and that was all live on YouTube, and it's great. And especially after the event has passed, you can save it, automatically saves, and then you can embed that, which is really useful, because then you'll have videos for people to watch. Doing things like a webinar or walkthroughs, again, you can use a video version of the content I was talking about, how to be a better poker player. And then afterwards, you get that YouTube video, you go to someone like SpeechPad, they charge you $1 for every minute of audio, a 5-day turnaround. So if you've done a webinar for an hour, you pay $60 and you'll get 60 minutes worth of text, which you can then put on your own page with the YouTube video itself. So the final things are the little things that can be very good for quick wins. So offering discount codes, I've mentioned before, but offering loads. Offer them very specifically for each site even. So if you have just a 10% off and it just says 10%, you're not going to always know where those people come from. But if you go on My Voucher Codes and you put MVC Oct 14, then you'll know that they've come from that site in that month, and you'll be able to eventually see how each discount site and provider actually deals with those discounts and how well they perform. The other thing is Reddit. I don't use it that much, but you can get a lot of traffic if you place certain links within subreddits of gambling or in poker or anything, any niche that you might be in. I know that the SEO one specifically is very interactive, and if you get the right content, you can get a hell of a lot of traffic, which again, if you've done all this stuff before, will be easy to convert people. Buffer I use a lot. It's a tweeting and Facebook post update and LinkedIn, and I think it even has Google Plus now, scheduling system. So when we worked with the Amy Winehouse Foundation a couple of years ago, I met with Universal Records, and they let me into their Facebook page, which gives you a lot of insight when there's like 7 million fans. And what I found out is that most of the people who interacted with the page were from Mexico. So I told them to, at 10 o'clock at night UK time, to do a few updates in Spanish and see what happens, and the uptake was massive. And it's those simple things. It was just one little change. It took them about 10 minutes to sort out through Buffer, and they could even use the analytics within Buffer to see where those people came from. But the conversions of buying her new album, which came out at the time, really did help. Also using seasonality is, again, quite obvious, but people don't do it. When the World Series of Poker's on, make sure you cover it before, during and after. Using that content and getting all the videos that they actually do themselves is easy. You can just take their content from YouTube, put it on your site, and then put your own take on it, and there you go, there's more content. Also using forms. I've not seen a lot of contact forms on gaming sites, and I've been on a lot of sites that just look like they've been made in about 3 hours and then left, and then they hope for the best. You need to make sure that those contact forms are there. People can contact you, and make sure that you get back to them, because if you get back to them, the trust is automatic. You're probably beating 95% of the people who have got their sites simply because you're interacting with them. Using gravity forms, if you've got a WordPress site, is great as well. You can do very, very custom forms, ask them specific questions should you want to. You can do things like polls or any other kind of data capture, and it also ties into things like MailChimp and Aweber. So if you want to fill out any form, you can just have a tick box which is automatically ticked saying add me to the mailing list, and there you go. It just is seamless. Lastly is live chat. I've seen it work on a lot of gaming sites. You can use Olark, and it's free. It's branded and everything, but it's very cheap just to get a white label version of it. Integrates with Skype or with Google Chat, and simply talk to them. And I think you can use settings where it's proactive, so it kind of pops up and says, hey, do you need any help? And the amount of people that actually go, yeah, I've just got a random question, and just answering it there and then will go, oh, brilliant, there's actually someone on the other end. They're a human being, and that's great. And if you can direct them, I know that OLART tells you what page they're on, where they've been, and whether they're actually navigating through the site as they're chatting to you. So you can have really freaky conversations with people, like, oh, you're on our poker page, are you? Oh, here's a link specifically to a bit of a bonus that you can get, or a bit of deposit money. And those little things do create a lot more conversions. And that's it. Thanks very much. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask.
Hi. If you had to pick one thing, because obviously you went through loads of stuff, what would you sort of rank it? What would you say go for first? What's like the best quick win?
CTAs, definitely. It's easier to do. You can even just, if you don't know anything about HTML, you can just create an image version. I think there's button generators on the web. You can just say, here's the text, here's a color scheme, and you download it as a JPEG and just shove it in your site, and make sure it's just a different color. That's the one thing, and it's probably the easiest thing to do. You need the least amount of knowledge, and it really does have a lot of impact.
Yeah, I've got a quick question. Regarding the content, I don't want to be unfair, but most of the people in the audience probably wouldn't call themselves the best writers in the world. How do you marry the two? Yeah, you can take a video off YouTube and put your spin on it, but you still have to write it up, make it sound good. What's your tips on that?
Hire me. No, read what other sites are doing and the way that they're doing it, and what I tend to do and what we tend to do is don't obsess about search engines and try and keyword stuff things. Just write as though you would want to read it, and surprisingly it does naturally go into natural language and it does work. I know that some people aren't the best writers, so hiring a freelancer is important. If you've got a very limited budget, and if you haven't, just hire an agency who have a content team, and they can make really creative stuff that's beyond your 500 to 700 words.
Can you recommend any agencies?
Any what, sorry?
Agencies that I do.
There's me. We have a great team, and there's no one else who will be able to do a good job.
Well, thank you very much, Alex. And remember, journalists are journalists for good reason. So thank you very much, Alex, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you.